Welcome back to the channel. I have a video that I'm really excited to do. I've been working on a project here. You'll have known from the title that this is the Bill Evans OJC quote unquote box. So as everyone knows, the Riverside recordings of Bill Evans has been put out by AP. You can see it here. This is a great box. It's been repressed a couple of times. It's done 45, it's 22 LPs, all 11 Riverside recordings by Bill Evans. You'll also notice that it's one of the more pricey box sets that you can get. A lot of people have gotten it. Felipe, Chris, Melinda Murphy, Michael 45, Joe Marino, The Wax. So I've been feeling a little bit of FOMO, and I've been working to alleviate that by seeking out all the different OJCs for the Bill Evans Riverside recordings. I've done that. We're going to go through them. There are a lot of records that I'm going to show, and I want to do a few things. One, I'll show you the pressings that I purchased. So OJC has a lot of different pressings throughout the decades. We're going to get into that a little bit. I'm going to link each copy that I have and recommend into the comments. So if anybody wants to seek out or do this, you will be able to do that. But we're going to compare certain OJC pressings. We're also going to compare it against, we're going to do 4 comparisons against the AP box set. So Felipe was kind enough to send me 4 discs of the 22 for 4 of the different albums, and I was able to do an A/B test, and I'll give you my thoughts on the differences. Before we really dive into it, though, I want to kind of talk about OJC. Number one, Bob Bradley has a great video that he kind of broke down why he's a fan of OJC. I'm going to link this in the description as well. This is the video here. You can see he is showing some of the Bill Evans records on OJC that he's picked up. But also, I want to talk about kind of the mastering source. So OJC doesn't explicitly state what the source is, but Philip Delancey, he was one of the mastering engineers that was hired in 1986. And on the Steve Hoffman forums, he replied to one of the members, stating that he started, and at first everything was definitely analog, direct from the 2-track masters. At some point in the 90s, we got our digital console, but I believe that was mostly for CDs. There have been some exceptions, but my recollection is that in most cases, they continue to cut the vinyl analog. And he left in 1999. I'm going to link this also in the description, so you guys have everything that you need to kind of dive in for yourselves if you're interested in picking up all of these or a few of these. So that said, I'm going to jump into it. Remember to like and subscribe, comment, let me know what you think about this. I'm going to run through each of these, talk a little bit about the pressings. There are 11 of them, so I won't go too deep into each record itself, but I wanted to kind of speak to which pressings that I selected and some of the information I was able to get from them. So first up, we're going to start with Bill Evans' New Jazz Conceptions. This is a 1982 mono. This is the only mono that I got. The rest will be stereo. This is OJC 025. This is pressed by Fantasy, and Jack Higgins was the engineer. So Jack Higgins is basically, I think he's the cutting engineer at the time. So these records they sound excellent. So you could be confident in buying early 80s OJCs cut by Jack Higgins for sure. So I also wanted to point out on the label on the record, all of these will look similar. So it has this kind of light blue color. And you'll see at the bottom here, it says Fantasy, Berkeley, California. Now that's important to see because there are pressings that I did receive that were done by Concord. The Concord ones are slightly different. They have slightly different labels. They have slightly different spines, and they sound different. We'll talk about we'll do an A/B, the results of my A/B on the sound of those. But the result is that the Fantasies are the ones to get. So that's what you want to look for when you're getting these OJCs. The next one here, this is a modern one. So this is Everybody Digs Bill Evans. This was recorded in March 1959. This is the 2015 stereo OJC 068. This is also Fantasy. This was pressed up RTI, and Jack Higgins was the engineer on this as well. You'll see This also has that aqua light blue label with the fantasy down at the bottom there. Next up is Portrait and Jazz. This is recorded in 1960, Rave Sound Studios in New York City. This is the 2011 stereo OJC 088. This is fantasy. This is also RTI and Jack Higgins. Sounds fantastic. Again, the label. And actually, I did want to point out that, take a couple of these, the spines on these will be similar. So that's what you want to look for. And I do want to show, for example, on this Concord version, here I could just show this now. The Concord version will have, so this actually has a black Riverside label, which is similar to what AP selected. And their spine is a little different. So just things to watch out for so you can better identify what it is. So it doesn't have the OJC at the top here, which is what you want to look for. All right. So that is Portrait and Jazz. Next one is Explorations. This was recorded in March 1961. This is recorded at Bell Sound in New York City. This is the 1982 stereo OJC 037. This is fantasy, and Bill Stoddard was the engineer on this one. And you can see it does have that same label there. We have Sunday at the Village Vanguard. This is a 2008 stereo fantasy OJC 140, pressed at RTI, and engineer is Dave Jones on this one. So the modern ones, you want to look for the RTI pressings. This is another RTI pressing. So this is Waltz for Debbie. This is the 2011 version, fantasy. And yeah, so that's the one I got here. That's from February 1962 with the same logo or label. Now we're going to Know What I Mean. So this is a Cannonball Adderley lead record with Bill Evans. This is recorded in 1962 at Bell Sound in New York City. This is the 1984 stereo OJC 105, fantasy, Bill Stoddard and George Horn. And this was pressed at Columbia Records plant in Pittman. This one sounds really good. I do think, I mean, they all sound really good, the ones that I've selected and I'm showing, but the older ones I think have a little bit of that extra magic to it, but they all really do sound good. This is Moonbeams. This was done at Soundmaker Studio in New York City, December 1962. This is the 2009 stereo OJC 434. This is fantasy, and Bill Schwartz, I think, did this with, this was the first one that I am showing that was remastered by Phil Delancey in 1990. And you'll see the ones that are remastered by Phil Delancey have that noted here. And the reason why I did some research on it, and I showed you Phil Delancey's email earlier, is because I've heard that you want to avoid the Phil Delancey ones. And I think those are just maybe indicative that they're later, they're not the early 80s versions. But as he said, they were mostly, if not all, cut analog. And the ones that I have sound excellent. So I have no issue with the Phil Delancey ones that I have. So that is the Moonbeams label. Again, they all share the same label on the fantasy logo, or on the when they're pressed by fantasy. Next one up, we have At Shelley's Manhole, 1963. This was recorded in Hollywood, California. This is the 1986 stereo. When I got this, a lot of the 80s ones I got were actually completely sealed. So you still can get these brand new. And yeah, this is a fantasy and OJC 263. Again, just a quick snapshot of the label. We have two more here. This is Interplay. This was recorded June 1963, Soundmaker Studio, New York City. This is the 1987 stereo pressing, OJC 308. At Fantasy, this was pressed also at Columbia Records pressing plant. And this was also remastered by Phil Delancey. And our final one here is How My Heart Sings, Bill Evans Trio, Soundmaker Studio, New York City. This is 2009 stereo, OJC 369, fantasy, remastered by Phil Delancey as well. So those are the 11. I did want to show the spines of a couple of them again, because like the box set, there's a few of them that are actually colored, and it's similar here. So you could see that I think that's the live, what is this? This is the at Shelley's manhole, and then also Know What I Mean has the pink spine. So you'll be able to stack them up nicely, just like you will with your AP box. All right. So those are the ones that I have that I'm happy with. They're also all 33, which is nice. But now let's get into the comparisons against the AP. So I listened to these, and when I put them on, I started with the OJC first, then moved to the Analog Productions version second. So the first one I did was Waltz for Debbie, and I selected the track Detour Ahead. Let me just show. Yeah, so I won't take it out of the sleeve, but here's the AP version. What I noticed the difference was the OJCs, like I said, they sound very good. I'm happy with all of them, but these, at least on this Waltz for Debbie, the bass is richer, it's quieter, like in the quiet spots, it's quieter. There's better definition, particularly around the cymbals and drums. And then also for Waltz for Debbie on the OJC, it sounded like Bill, who was in your right channel, was a little buried in the mix, and he was way more upfront in the AP one, and that was a significant difference that I heard between the two of those. So I think the AP one is better balanced in terms of the musicians, and then I think with the 45 and the mastering that was done for these, you're going to get kind of richer bass and then quieter sounding vinyl. All right, the next one is Moonbeams. I selected the track In Love in Vain. So the OJC one, again, sounds very good, but the AP one reveals more of Paul Motion's drums. You can hear his brushwork. It's really nice to be able to hear that level of detail. There's better soundstage with Bill more forward and then Chuck Israel's bass to the right. You can kind of, there's better imaging or a better soundstage on the AP one. You can kind of picture exactly where they're playing. I did this both in my speakers and my headphones, and not that you can't do that in the OJC, but I think it's just clearer in the AP, which is to be expected, right? Okay, next one up is Sunday at the Village Vanguard. So I picked the Miles Davis song Solar on this one. And here I noted that this may be the least amount of difference, but the AP, you can hear Scott's strings pluck more, and Bill is a little deeper in the mix on this one. And there's better bass on this one, but this one, the contrast wasn't that different. So yeah, so both of these sound really good. I would again edge it out to AP for sure. Okay, and then finally, Portrait in Jazz. I did Periscope. This is a Bill Evans song. And this one, there was little difference as well. I really had difficulty identifying really anything that was different, that at least was notable. So this one, there wasn't too much difference that I could tell. So those are my comparisons. AP definitely wins out. I mean, that's unexpected. But yeah, the last thing I wanted to do was talk about these Concord releases. So I showed this Bill Evans Explorations, and I also picked up the Interplay Bill Evans. So you can see they have similar spines, so just something to help identify that these are Concord pressings. This one does have, that has the black, and this one does have kind of an aqua label like the Fantasy, but you'll see at the bottom, it doesn't say Fantasy, it'll say Concord. And yeah, so I did an A/B comparison of both of these, and I selected, for Explorations, I selected, what is this, Nardis, a Miles Davis tune. There was significant difference between the Fantasy and the Concord. The Fantasy sounds much better. It's clearer. There's higher highs. There's better bass. There's crisper definition. It's notably better. So that was also the case for Interplay. You could really tell on Freddie Hubbard's trumpet the difference on this. So my recommendation is to avoid the Concord pressings and go after the Fantasy ones. The other thing I wanted to mention is that I believe there's a booklet that comes with the AP box. So I picked myself up this Bill Evans little companion. This really focuses on gigs and recording. So this is a nice piece to be able to kind of flip through and reference as you're going through all the different records. So you might want to pick this up too to get more context as to what was going on during that time. And finally, yeah, I'll talk cost. So I want to thank Joe Marino. He picked up the AP box and he was able to kind of offset the 4 OJC Bill Evans, or he had, I think, 5 or 6 of them, but there were 4 that I didn't have. So he was able to sell me those for a very fair price. So thank you, Joe. And then the rest I either got off of Elusive Disc, Discogs, eBay, Acoustic Sounds. And overall, I totaled up everything. I was able to kind of find all the different prices after shipping and taxes that I paid. And what it came down to for these 11 albums is just over $30 per album. So it was significantly less than the AP box, but and the sound quality's there. They're also 33. If you really want the best sounding version of this AP box is probably the way to go. I haven't heard every reissue, but I'm thinking the AP box is up there and probably the ultimate version that you can get. But I will say, if you're having FOMO and you want to get these records, you can get them through OJC. They're pressed really well, they're mastered really well, they're presented really nicely, they sound good, and I highly recommend it. This was really fun for me to do. Thank you again to Joe Marino. Thank you to Chris and Felipe for talking me through this. And I'm excited to hear what you guys think about this. So please leave your comments. Remember to like and subscribe, and I will see you next time. Thanks.